Hello and welcome to Wasted Potential, the show where we discuss the wasted potential of our favourite plotlines. To avoid bogging down the upcoming A Line Through Time episode on the franchise, this video will be where I focus on a particularly uncomfortable subject from Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater. This topic surrounds the parentage of one of the game's protagonists, Miyu Hinasaki. Her mother is Miku Hinasaki, the main protagonist of the first game and a supporting character in the third. So let's quickly summarise her previous appearances first. In the first Zero/Project Zero/Fatal Frame, Mafuyu Hinasaki goes missing in the haunted Himuro mansion while searching for his missing mentor. Since their mother had committed suicide a couple years previous, Mafuyu is now the guardian of his 17-year-old younger sister Miku, and the two are very close. Like Claire Redfield before her, Miku heads into the mansion to find her brother herself. It turns out that the rope shrine maiden Kyrie, who was to take part in a ritual to keep the souls of the dead at bay, refused to do so following the murder of her lover. Mafuyu resembles this young man, and Kyrie has thus taken him as a replacement. Miku defeats her, but Mafuyu chooses to stay behind with Kyrie as a spirit to keep her company as she works to subdue the darkness. 2 years later, in Fatal Frame 3 The Tormented, Miku is now the assistant and housemate of new protagonist Rei Kurosawa. Those who are tormented by the death of a loved one are drawn into the manner of sleep in their dreams, which gives them the tattooed curse that will kill them within 2 months. This includes Miku, who lost Mafuyu, Rei, whose fiancé was killed in a car crash, and even Mio Amakura from the second game, who lost her twin sister. Miku's regret over surviving leads to her following the vision of Mafuyu in the manor, leaving her trapped in an endless dream until Rei is able to resolve the issue by helping the tattooed priestess find peace. This was reportedly intended as the conclusion to the story of the 3 leads, as Mio meets the other 2 protagonists and their supernatural torment is concluded. But the team behind the 5th game, almost a decade later, felt the need to continue the story by bringing Miku back. Miyu is searching for her mother, who disappeared when she was 3. Now, 20 years since the death of her uncle, Miyu finds her mother and discovers how she came to be. It turns out that, during her coma in FF3, Miku had an encounter with Mafuyu's spirit. A sexual encounter. And got pregnant with her brother's incest ghost baby. Producing a Yomiko child significantly reduces one's lifespan. As such, 3 years later, sensing the end approaching, she straight up abandons her daughter to go and take part in the Yukon ritual, an event in which a living person is married to a dead person so that she can be with her brother again. Why exactly the ghost would bother performing the ritual for her, or even how she found out about it in the first place, I'm not entirely sure. Now, let it be noted that I don't have a problem with incest being used as a plot device entirely. I can't really think of any subject that should be completely off limits in storytelling as long as it's handled well. However, I do take issue with its use here. See, the game never specifies when exactly Miku started to develop romantic feelings towards Mafuyu. They don't say that it started after his death or after the finality of his death really sank in after 3. As such, we're left to assume that she always felt this way towards him. All throughout her appearances in the first and third games, Miku wasn't searching for her brother and mourning his death simply because he's her brother and she has no one else. No, it's because she wanted to fuck him. Those previous stories are now tainted by this revelation. Any subsequent viewings of those 2 stories are done with the knowledge of Miku's true intentions in the back of the viewer's mind. It also makes it hard to root for her, knowing that she will abandon her 3-year-old daughter because she didn't get quite enough of her brother's dick last time. It might not have been quite as bad had they made it clear that her feelings developed after the 3rd game, or better, made it clear that she didn't have such feelings and only took part in the wedding as a formality to see her dead brother again. But what really makes this revelation as atrocious as it is that I don't think it was done because the writers felt this was the natural progression for this character's story. Rather, I think it was done for much more cynical reasons. In between the 3rd and 5th games, the little sister who wants to fuck her own brother trope was popularised in Oremo and then given a bit of a recent boost in Sword Art Online, though ironically, SAO handles this a little better than most, and when Reki Kawahara of all people handles a subject better than you do, it's time to re-evaluate your fucking life. I cannot see the decision to take the story in this direction as anything other than a shallow marketing decision to appeal to the Siscon crowd. But let's just assume for a second that the writers simply wanted to explore the Yukon ritual and Yomiko with a playable character from a previous installment, and Miku seemed like the logical choice to them for reasons that only make sense if you happen to be from the moon. Or maybe they just wanted to use the hero of the first game, the Chris Redfield/Harry Mason, and this was the best way they could think to include her, somehow. A character from 4 would no doubt have been a better choice, perhaps leaving 1 to 3 as their own story and letting 4 onwards be a new one. But I have an even better choice than that. A character for whom this scenario honestly seems like it was written specifically before they replaced her with the much more recognisable Miku, Rei Kurosawa. Miku met Rei through her brother's friend, Yu Aso, who was also Rei's fiancé. Fiancé, as in the person she was going to marry before he was killed in a car crash. Doesn't the idea of a living person marrying a dead person feel like it was written with Rei and Yu in mind rather than a brother and sister? 5's main heroine, Yori, lives with Hisoka Kurosawa, an alleged relative of Rei's who lives near the mountain where the ritual is performed. Imagine that Rei tells Hisoka about her experiences in the 3rd game, since both have an interest in the paranormal. The subject of people being separated by death leads to Hisoka telling Rei about the Yukon ritual. Rei then travels to the region under the pretense of visiting her relative, with the ulterior motive to take part in one of these rituals so that she and Yu can do what they had promised to do before his death, intending to get some closure on that chapter of their life so that Yu can rest in peace and Rei can move on with her life. Naturally, they consummate the marriage that night. Unbeknownst to them, however, a male spirit sperm can actually impregnate a living woman, resulting in their daughter, who we'll just call Miu for the sake of simplicity. Rei then raises this Yomiko as a single mother. She either never speaks about the father or pretends she got pregnant the day before Yu's death, but it only showed late. Miu doesn't learn the truth until Rei disappears when her daughter comes of age. Imagine it's some kind of price to pay for having been given the chance to bond with the dead and have a child. The mountain calls her back and compels her to head towards the shoreline so she can be reunited with Yu in the afterlife. Miu goes after her, eventually having the opportunity to save her before she is spirited away, just as in the actual game. Only, you know, don't have the ending be tied into whether or not the player took a picture of Miu's mother before approaching her, because that has to be the most needlessly obscure method of getting an alternate ending I've ever heard of. Sometimes all it takes to improve a story in a big way is to replace 1 or 2 characters so that the events fit in better with the established personalities and storylines of the characters involved. By swapping Miku and Mafuyu for Rei and Yu, for instance, you avoid the utterly damaging incest angle and get what feels like a very natural next step in Rei's storyline that gives her some final closure rather than really not accomplishing anything by using Miku. And by having the mother's disappearance be a much more recent thing and outside of her control rather than abandoning her infant child for selfish reasons, it allows the two to have a much stronger connection by the start of the game, which works far better for getting the audience invested in the daughter's plight and as a parallel to the mother's debut story, and also doesn't ruin the character by making her a selfish, unlikable cunt. Even putting aside how naturally Rei fits into this storyline, Rei is the only one of the original 3 protagonists to not get any play outside of her debut. Miku has returned twice, Mio returned and starred in a remake, and both have made cameos in other games. But Rei is limited to Fatal Frame 3 and having Hisoka's design in 5 be based on hers. She feels weirdly obscure compared to her fellow heroines. But let's not discuss the direction they took the story anymore. Instead, let's end on a really weird detail I noticed when first playing number 5. Don't worry, it's not as messed up as incest ghost babies. Nothing's as messed up as incest ghost babies. Every single member of the female cast at least once gets summoned to the mountain in a trance, walking out of Hisoka's home towards the mountain. When a character is inside the house, they have their shoes off, since that's the custom in Japan and other countries where the people aren't savage Neanderthals. When a character is in the front cafe or outside the building, they have them on, even the characters who have been drawn away in a trance. They don't respond to other people around them, but they do have the wherewithal to put their shoes on before they go out. I guess spiritual possession can make a person agree to suicide, but it can't override one's disdain towards getting their feet dirty. If you liked this video, why not like and subscribe and check the description for more content. If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you. Also, in my version, Ren actually locks the doors when women start being spirited away. You know, instead of being retarded.